Every year when we're right at the beginning of spring break getting to happen, Parker, Christina, myself, and Allie, we're finding ourselves messaging students, middle school students, high school students, talking to you about what's coming in the summer. And you've likely received a text message this week from a texting service, a person, or something asking you if you want to go to CIY Move this summer. Now, it's crazy because it's still cold. Like it's as I'm recording this, it's cold today. It doesn't feel like summer. But guys, we have some planning we have to do. We have deposits we have to make. We need you to be asking your friends now. In fact, tonight is probably the night that you need to put some hard press on some of those friends that you know need to get to CIY Move this summer. And here's why. We've got 160 spots. About 130-ish of them are spoken for. And so what that means, there's only room for 30 of your friends to go. And so those people that you've been wanting to ask, those people that are kind of on the bubble, man, it is time to start asking and asking and asking because those spots are going to fill up quick. And we want you and your friends to potentially have a life-changing experience at CIY Move this summer. I've been thinking about, and making all these text messages, why it's so, moments like this can be really important in the lives of people. And I realized something, if you've ever walked with me to the venue at one of those events, I really have this opinion that the 5 days that we spend at Move gives us this little snapshot of potentially what heaven might be like a little bit. I mean, it's not perfect because, man, there's still stuff that happens at Move that we wish wouldn't happen at Move, but it might be the closest picture we have of people living in community, worshiping God, focused on who God is, what He thinks of us, and we're doing that together as the church. And it just might be one of the most beautiful snapshots of what heaven may be like someday. Some people have this image of like angels with wings and harps and all this stuff. Man, if you read the Bible that God wrote, the Bible that I read, there's not a lot of angels with harps and chubby faces like floating around. It's more a really hard to describe scenario, but a few things are consistent. People living in community, worshiping God, God speaking truth and life into them. And I feel like that is a snapshot. And the reason that Move truly is satisfying is because I feel like as we look at the world around us, we get this unsatisfied feeling. And I feel like it's best wrapped up in this statement. Things really shouldn't be this way. I think about that in regards to like global famine, disease. I think about nations of people warring against each other, like literally like people hating one another to the point of when I look at you, I don't even know you, but I want to see you put to death. Like I think about that. I think about the crime. I think about the hurt. I think about addiction. And like I sit here and go, God really didn't design it to be this way. And as we look in Scripture, we see over and over again that God's in agreement with us. In fact, I mean, you'd probably flip it the other way around, like that spirit of dissatisfaction of like the world that we live in to some extent. God's like, man, it shouldn't be this way. The first time God ran into this was back in Genesis. It was after He had created the world and humans had inhabited it for some time. Sin had already entered the world through Adam and Eve, and it got to this point where it says every inclination of the human heart was only sin all the time. And I was thinking about how that had to have broke the heart of God to go, I didn't intend this to be this way. And that was right before He goes, you know what? We're going to push hard reset. I see sinful humanity, global flood. We're going to start over with with Noah and his family. They're righteous. We're going to start over. And so global flood, the ark, all of these things, all of creation, aside from what was inside the ark, is pushed reset. And then Noah and his family, God's like, you know what, we're going to start over. But you know what happened? Like the same thing. Selfishness, pride, war, envy, disease, hatred, jealousy. All of these things just happened again. And here's what happened. God said, flood didn't work. I'm never doing that again. The only option that we have is my son. And so God goes, this is the solution. This is the final repair. This is what is going to bring peace on earth. And the scripture that we're looking at tonight is, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. And I was thinking about this. In order to be peacemakers, what is it going to take for us to be considered peacemakers here on earth? Because like you guys, you walk through your school hallways, you go to work, you see angry customers, you see frustrated teachers, you see your classmates that literally do the opposite of peace. They sow the seeds of hatred and dissension between one another. They gossip, they tell lies, they do all of these things to do the complete opposite of peace. And it ushers in chaos into our world. But God is sitting here saying, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children, the children of God. And so I was thinking about how God stepped into peacemaking. Because if we're going to find ourselves being peacemakers, it's going to begin with you and I making peace with God. And the same emotion that God felt at the flood, when every inclination of the human heart was only sin all of the time, I feel like he was at the same moment, and he said the new solution is, okay, I'm going to send my son into the world. This is going to be the solution. And Jesus, being God made man, ran into the same emotion over and over again, you guys, where like he felt it shouldn't be this way. One was when his friend Lazarus died. He had a really good friend that was, if you've ever had that friend that probably gathered people around, and like whenever fun was happening, this friend was involved. They would make the plans. Like this was the guy that, Lazarus was the guy that I feel like probably didn't have any enemies. He was the one that everybody liked. When Lazarus showed up, the party kind of happened, or Lazarus was the one that created the party, and the party was literally drawn to him. Jesus had found out that he was sick and was making his way towards a village, and he saw the hurt because his friend Lazarus had died. And he saw the people mourning, and he was overwhelmed with emotion to the point that he wept. And I think we forget the humanity of Jesus. He wasn't just a man that was a robot that didn't live, feel, touch, cry, laugh. Like he was overwhelmed with the emotion of the death of his friend. And there was another moment where I think Jesus was truly overwhelmed. And like I think about his attitude with Lazarus dying, he was like, I didn't intend it to be this way. My Father never intended death. He never intended pain and hurt and all of this and then all of that, and in the midst of it, witnessing it, looking at it on the faces of people, and he's like, I didn't intend it to be this way. And then the other time is in the Garden of Gethsemane. It was moments before Jesus was going to be arrested and crucified, and he was arrested and crucified because of sinful humanity. This is the right solution for the sinful condition of our world. And he was moved to stress and tears to the point that he was sweating blood because he just felt it going, it shouldn't be this way, but Father, if there is no other way, I will walk in obedience to you, and I will do what needs to be done. Father, your will, not my will, be done. And I think in that statement element, that's where we find peacemaking at war, is because essentially what's at stake is we want our will to be done, and we're pretty unwilling to submit our will and go, no, God, not just here's my will you bless it and do something with it? But it's truly asking God, what is your will? And how can I walk in obedience to your plan? Because that's where peacemaking begins. And I wonder if you could see that, because peacemaking begins between you and God. And that happens here in Grand Island. It happens in your bedroom. It happens in your Lifehouse tonight, like you making peace with the creator of the universe. An event like Move doesn't have to happen in order for you to meet your creator, but like I'll tell you that it's a great place where people are away from the distractions of the world, and they may actually listen to the voice of God. You see, when Jesus had that moment in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was alone with his Father, away from distractions, and Jesus had a rhythm of doing that, because he knew in order for him to be able to bring peace to earth, he was going to need to be able to be at peace with the Father. And the only way you can do that is time with the Father. And that's where it begins. So I think about you tonight. If you are going to begin to be a part of this peacemaking journey of the church here on earth, it begins between you and God. Because whether you acknowledge it or not, or know it or not, your selfish ambition, your drive for life that is focused on you, is at war with the Spirit of God. God is wanting you to submit your life to him and to go, God, here is my life. Do with it what you will. I want to live and walk in obedience to your purpose and not mine. And listen, I get it. That sounds so anti-cultural, because you've been told from a very young age, do whatever makes you happy. Pursue whatever joys that you have in life. But that is totally opposite of how God has intended us to live. And see, we're in need of saving. We're in need of making peace with the Father if we are ever to be ambassadors of God's love and God's peace to the world around us. If we're ever to be the peacemakers that would be called the children of God. Element, I think about your classrooms and your schools and your teams. If there's likely over 100 high school students in Lifehouses tonight, I picture this thought. If all of those students would take on the mission of being a peacemaker and what that would mean. I mean, think of all of the ways that instead of being peacemakers, we're peace wreckers. All the moments where you've talked about someone behind their back, or talked to someone to their face, or you've been hurtful to someone, or you've basically any moment that you've ushered in chaos instead of peace. Because look, Scripture says that as followers of Christ, the writer of a letter in the New Testament says, I plead with you on behalf of Christ to be ambassadors of God's love. It means that like we are foreigners living here, and God is asking us to be the messengers, the ambassadors, the bringers of God's love and God's peace to a world that is hungry and desperate for it. What if you would be ambassadors of that love to the world that you live in? And when I say the world that you live in, I mean your homes, your schools, your workplaces, your teams, your clubs, your activities, your hobbies, all of those things. You bring the peace of God into those environments, because it's in those moments when you humbly submit yourself to that process that you will find yourselves living as the children of God.